filter. This is a large filter that comes right off the main line, and it's going to take up all the sediment that's coming through the line. So anything that the city's sending in, this will get up any large objects to not clog our small drip lines. So we put one of these in, and this should be cleaned out about every 3 months. It really not a lot comes through, but we just check them every 3 months. And inside of here, if I don't get dirt everywhere, is just a large filter, really fine, and it traps everything. So we take that out, rinse it off, pop it back in, and screw that back on. We usually have anywhere from a 10 to 12 PSI reducer, because if you have city water, sometimes they'll be taken and they'll run it 30 pounds into your house and it'll blow out all your irrigation. It's not made. The 12 is the best. 12 PSI is what we found is the best for up to 10 raised beds at the same time. This one's 20, but 12 is the best. This is a 1-inch. We only use 3/4. I just took this out of the shed. So this is a large, very large one. All the other ones are going to be much smaller. But 12 PSI is what we use. And then, oh, good. Then we have our solenoid. And this is our solenoid. And we run these off our noise. And a noid is a battery-powered system. So we go in there, we set the time, and it just takes, I think it's 3 AA's, and it runs our system. We can leave it right down in the irrigation box, and it runs this solenoid, and this will pop on and off as needed. So that's what we kind of use in our gardens, is we use the noids. What's that? Well, we'll talk about that too. We're going to get to all that. Yeah, we don't use button drippers at all. We won't do that. So he asked, do we use button drippers? And we do not. We use drip tape or spaghetti line. Those are the two, and I'll show you what those are. So we use a long line that drips the whole garden all at once, okay? So this is our main coming in. This is what you want to have. You want to have a filter, you want to have a reducer, and then you want to have your solenoid. The filter needs to go first. Otherwise, you're getting stuff in your reducer and your solenoid. And we'll hear all sorts of different things about that. Go ahead, Mr. Bill.
The filter first, valve, then the pressure. Filters are not right.
Yes.
So you don't want them on.
All right.
So that.
Okay. All right. So he says, do the other one first. We always put the filter first on ours because we're having these get clogged up all the time.
Pretty well self.
Right. But we have a problem with these all the time where we are. So we run it a little different. We've never had these blow out, but we'll look for that. We'll change it if needed. All right. So that's what we do. Irrigation for raised and in-ground are different. What we do is drip tape. So this is what we use. We use long strips of drip tape. Drip tape is exactly what it says. It's poly, very thin, and every 6 inches there's a drip button in it. Okay, this is what we use, drip tape. So every 6 inches. So we lay that. There's 2 ways to lay this drip tape. You can lay it down where it drips down. Really, it's made to drip up. The problem because there's little pockets here. I'll pass this around, but there's a little bowl right there that usually holds a few drops in it, and it's supposed to run out. The problem we're finding is because of Tucson water, is it sits there and it calcifies and then it clogs up that. So we flip ours upside down so it's a constant drip and then it stays out. So you can run it either way, but this lasts about 2 years before you have to replace it because it gets too calcified. So this will last about 2 years is what I kind of recommend. Yes? Well, then there's drip tube. We don't use it though. So then there's drip tube, which is 1/4 inch tubing, and every 6 inches there's a drip button in it. Okay. The problem we're seeing with this is it's harder to maintain than this for us. Okay. Price is a big thing when you're running off of grants and everything else and all the other stuff. And this clogs faster. When we were doing it, it's such a thin line that actually if anything gets in this smaller line, it's clogged and it'll start building up. And then you have anything past that clog is not getting anything. These are wonderful in a small garden. When you're looking at 20 to 30 plots, and you're trying to make sure they drip everything and you don't have enough time to check on them all, and you have gardeners worried about that, you're there only maybe every 2 weeks, this is our best bet to make sure we get everything watered and it stays watered as much as possible. This one is a little more for smaller gardens, at least I'm concerned. It's more of where you can get out there and really check on it a lot and make sure that this isn't clogged in any way. Okay. The biggest thing we have is clogged drippers. That's the hardest thing. So we use it, and it runs at about a 0.33 gallon an hour. So, and that's plenty. That's every dripper puts out a third of a gallon over an hour. So we run during the summer upward an hour, and then during the winter we're down to sometimes 30 to 40 minutes, depending on, you know, how cold it is outside. That will water very deep. Okay, but again, every area is different. We get more into that. The spaghetti line is that second line I talked about. It's the same rate usually. Again, there's all sorts of little different rates in there. So you got to make sure when you go into Home Depot or the irrigation, what's the drip on it? You have to ask them, what's the drip on it? Because if they give you something like a 0.5, then you got a whole different thing going on. Yes. We'll get into the difference between the two. It's all different. Yeah, the timing's coming. We'll get, yeah, I thought of everything to kind of explain as we went through. So, and again, it's different, and we'll get in more into that. There are two types of couplings when we use couplings, okay? For the drip tape, for the spaghetti line, it's just a coupling. You push it in this side, and you push the other one in, it holds it. Now, you remember, you put a coupling on this, now you've reduced that flow to the size of the coupling. So anything that gets clogged behind that coupling can do a thing. Whereas this, we use, these are screw-on couplings, okay? So this, I can take and you unscrew it. It's weird because you unscrew it out. So it shows this little point here. So there's this little thing, and I could push the drip tape onto it. It goes inside, and then I screw this up. See if I can do this right here, and it tightens and it holds it in place. So if I have a one little cut, like a bird came up and poked a hole in it, I can cut the drip tape, pop this coupling into it, and then just keep going. And I don't lose any length. It actually lengthens it by 1 inch. Okay, so this will add an inch. So a lot of people will add drip tape and they put a foot extra because they think every time that they cut a piece, it's going to reduce it. And actually, when you put in a coupling, it extends it. So drip tape just has to end at the end of the garden. You don't have to extend it farther just because you're cutting out pieces. Oh, Bill has one. So that's our little coupling for the spaghetti line. Just push it in one side. It's got both of them have a burr on the end that jams in and it won't pull out. This one's pretty easy. When you unscrew it, you just pop the new one out. You can save these. So if you decide to replace the whole line, you make sure you take your couplings off, store them, put the new tape in, and then if you need the coupling again, you can use it right again. This one might be a little harder to get out. You have to like cut the little line and pull it out. It's my experience, it's easy for me, but I know a lot of people try to pull it directly out. It's not coming out. You have to bend a certain way, and you got to make sure you don't snap them. So there's a lot. These also come in T's. They come in elbows. So you can run your line all over the place if you want drip tape. These also work for poly. Okay? You have a piece of poly in there? The thin one, not your huge.
People don't use it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try that one. So poly is just 1/2 inch line. It's black poly and it slips right over here. It's a little harder to get onto these, but they tighten up just as well. So you can use all this. So we really, when we get to the garden, we might run poly across the front of the garden and then run the drip tape down with T's and elbows. So we'll put a T, and an elbow, and then 3 lines of tape run down the garden. One down the center and one on each side. That's how we actually run it. We run the poly, the PVC comes, oh, did I drop it? Nope, it's there. The PVC comes up, it has a screw on. We take one of the screw on of these, we put it on there, we run poly across, seal the end, and then we run our drip tape all the way down. And you might see it in some pictures. Actually, you can see it's running in that line right there. So, yes. We do run our drip tape on top of the line, and the poly is always going to be above. I never bury poly. What we're finding out now is all the gardens that they buried the poly 6 to 12 inches, because we were so dry now, it's packing down, which means that poly is being pinched. And of course, you know, when poly pinches, the two short lines right here crack. So we're getting a lot of water coming up. So I've already, I have to replace 5 gardens with PVC. I've already replaced 2, well, 1 brand new one, 2 used, and now I have 3 more to go because this is in the ground and it keeps leaking over and over. Now, if you're just running this from your system, 2 inches into the ground all the way over to some trees, do it. There's no problem. If it's not a walking service. In a garden, we're walking between the beds all the time. So we're just jamming that dirt down. So that's the big thing you got to watch out for, is if it's in the ground and you keep stepping on it, it's going to flatten out and crack. So again, it's where you're at and what you're doing with it is the most important. Okay? Bill's going to come up and talk also. He's going to help a little bit because he's really done the home irrigation a lot. I've done some of that, and he's going to talk about different things he uses. Because we talked a little bit, and he said, I'd like to come say a little things about how he did it too. So, yes. No, well, blue line is the close. The black poly is better, but blue is poly. Depends on what you're doing with it, but I've had poly last. Oh, how long does poly last? Well, it depends on if it's exposed or in the ground. But I've had people run it through off into their trees and never had to replace it, except where it cracks because somebody stepped on it or a bird got to it or a rat ate through it or something. Because you got to remember, you have poly in the ground and an animal hears the water rushing through it and they're thirsty. What are they going to do? They're going to dig through that poly to get to the water, even though by the time they get to it, it might already be shut off because we don't have pressure on gardens. That's another reason why you don't have to bury poly super deep. And why we don't bury our PVC super deep is because there's no water in it during freezing times. We do not water our garden at 6 in the morning when it's 30 degrees out. So there's no water in the line, so the water that's in the line freezes, but there's plenty of room for it to move. If you have a solid line with water packed in there because it's under pressure, and it freezes, that's why it blows. There's nowhere for the ice to go, so it blows out your line. So that's why you can run, as soon as you have your our boxes are buried to make sure they don't freeze. But as soon as we leave it, there's no water in there until we let the timer go on. So our lines won't freeze. We don't have a problem with freezing lines because we water at 9 in the morning during the winter, or 10 when it's already warm, or we water at 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, where we don't have that problem. Okay, so again, watering times have to change as well as how much and a lot of things. And that's going to be, we'll talk more about that, is where are you at? Are you in the foothills? Are you in the center of the city? What's surrounding your garden? What keeps the heat in? What doesn't allow the heat to come in? How much wind do you get? There's tons of things. Yes? With which one? Swing pipe. Yeah, there you go. So, Bill was going to talk about this, but since you mentioned, he asked about swing pipe. Swing pipe is very thick poly. They call it swing pipe. Now, the problem is you aren't going to get the fittings that I have on this unless you're a professional and really know how. But there are fittings for it.
These common ones.
Yes. So you're going to use the slip-on. So you're going to do the outside ones, the slip-on ones, which I have one. I had one somewhere. The blue, oh, here it is. So this is a slip-on. So we used to lose slip-ons. This is you just push the poly in. Okay, so you can take this and you can push it in there. Now, I highly recommend that you don't push it in more than 1 inch. I'd say a half inch, because when you try to get that out, because you got to replace it, if it's in 1 inch, you got a heck of a problem. One time I'm trying to pull it out like this, and I was dumb enough to hold like this, and hit myself and sliced my head right open. It's like, if they were filming me, I probably could have made money off of funniest home videos. I don't know why, but I thought, oh, I'll just go like that. Nope, I hit myself and cut my forehead open. But that's a T and that's a slip in. So you can use these, there's couplings. The big thing about these is that pulling it out, because you got to replace it because somebody cracked it. So that's why we use the screw-ons, because I can walk up and replace it in 2 seconds compared to this, which I have to then cut the line, and I got to make sure I cut the line far enough where I can get a hold of it. Because if I try to save poly, cut it short, that's not coming out. So they haven't made a tool yet to slice inside and get it out, but I'm trying to invent one, so I'll let you know.
Just cut it out and then you put one.
That's right. You just pull the poly in and put a new one on. So that's this kind of stuff. So again, it's how much knowledge you have and what you actually want to do with it. This stuff will last a long time. This in the ground, out of the ground, you're going to have a lot of time. But again, it's the fittings that you're going to have the problems with. So when you pushed it in there and there's that movement because it's on and off, you might get little leaks right there and stuff like that where you have to pull in a little more. That's why I say 1/2 inch and then work your way in a little bit. Okay? So again, there's so many options that we can talk about.
Well, while you're on
At the end of the drip,
while you're on that subject, I just thought I'd say, I've never heard of swing pipe before, but I have discovered that Sprinkler World sells a poly by the 100-foot, by the 500-foot, that is higher quality and lasts longer than what you get at Home Depot.
exactly. That you're gonna pay for what you get for. So you got to decide how much money am I going to put into my garden and how long do I want it to last and how much is exposed and everything about it. You have to decide. There's so many options. Now you got to remember, you put out the money for the big stuff and a rat is going to eat through either one of them. Sure. Okay. Yep. Good. All right. Yep. Sprinkler World. They're wonderful places. Go check it all out. You can't just decide you're going to Home Depot. All the thing is, and I don't mean to put Home Depot or Lowe's or anything down, is the people they hire to work in a department aren't probably professionals 100% in that department. A lot of times I go in there and they ask me and I say, where's this? And they have no concept. And they're there because they work there. It's usually, they have like general knowledge of everything. So really do your due diligence. You go to Sprinkler World, you're going to have very knowledgeable people that are really going to help you. Okay, so you have that difference between a professional irrigation place compared to Home Depot, which is you're going to get what you get. Okay, so that, that's just the way it is when we do stuff. So yes, do your homework. You got to think about, we go to Home Depot. Why? Because we got thousands of feet of that stuff we have to buy. Thousands of feet. And even though we bought the big stuff, it just wouldn't work out. We just don't have the money to replace it and do all that right now. So we have to go what is in our finances for what I work for. So you got to think about that as you go forward. Let me get to the way we close off our drip tape. So there's this thing called a hamburger or a hot dog. And so the way we do our drip tape is you got to fold over the end. So what a hot dog is you fold over the drip tape, you fold it over one time, you fold it in half and it looks like a hot dog bun. You take a piece of that without the drip in it and you push it inside there, and you got to push about 2 to 3 inches on when it comes to a hot dog, because otherwise it'll blow out because you only have one fold and it's folded in half. I do the hamburger. So the hamburger is you fold it over in 1 inch, you fold another inch, then you pinch as hard as you can in half, which means I fold it over 1 inch, fold it over 1 inch, and there's actually a dripper in there. I pinch it, and I slide this over, and then I pinch just back here, and now it's a whole inch inside. So it's very hard to do, and we can talk. Go ahead. Sure. Is there a pause on that? Froze? All right. No problem. That's all right. I could teach you this too. We up again? All right. So the hamburger, because you only have to do it 1 inch, is going to save you a little bit of line, and it lasts a lot longer. It won't blow out. We're finding out when you just do the long, thin one, hot dog, and there's enough pressure that slowly wiggles that out, it might blow it out. So again, there's so many options, but if you have any problems with that, Tucson Community can haul them up. I'll come show you how to fold it. It's not that hard to do. So that's the way we close off the end. We don't use a closed fitting. As those slip-ons, there's actually a slip-on that has a valve on it that you can undo and blow water out, tighten it back up, and it closes the end. So there's so many options to do this. So many options. So many ways to do it. The other thing is the hot dog's easier to do if you don't really have the hand strength. The hamburger's pretty tough on your fingers. So you might have to bring over 20 feet to me and I'll fold it up in the hamburger, put it on. You could take it back home and put it on your unit. So whatever works. Normally needs to be replaced 2 to 3 years. Again, we leave it in there as long as possible, but we're finding now even more that the calcium is such a buildup in Tucson that we're losing the drip on anything. Spaghetti line, drip tape, it does not matter. Now, some people will roll it up real nice in the size of a 5-gallon jug, drop it in there, pour some vinegar in there, let it sit, dissolve all that, take it out, put the hose on the end, blow the water through to get all that calcium up and reuse it again. The big thing is don't let it sit and don't let it fold in half. If I go and I'm saving this and I leave it laying in my yard folded in half, you're going to have a problem with that because that'll dry out and crack. So if you do it, it has to be nice and round and left there. And this is, you got to do it when it's warm. This will not roll up real nice when it's cold out. Just like poly, it's harder when it's cold. So if you get this warmed up, it'll roll real nice. You can drop it in vinegar, get it out of there, rinse it out. You only leave it in there for a couple hours, maybe 12 hours, I'd say is good. Put it in there and leave it overnight. Take it out, run the hose through it, and then go ahead. And you can even take a little toothbrush, save your toothbrushes, because you can go and you can rub the toothbrush on every one of those little things. Again, that's going to save you a lot of money than having to buy we buy 500-foot rolls. So we have 500 feet of it.
Much is that?
I don't know what it is a foot. I don't have prices with me, but I know that spaghetti line and all that, it's priced at different places. So I couldn't tell you 100% what it is a foot. We go to Home Depot and get it. Or we go to Sprinkler World, Home Depot. I mean, we just, whatever's closest actually, if we need it. So sometimes Sprinkler World will give us 500 feet. We do a lot of a poly and the drip tape at Sprinkler World. We really like to visit the local place to help us out. So we try not to do Home Depot too much. But again, they sometimes have the better fitting, so. Yeah, so she uses spaghetti line, and yes, the same thing. You could drop it in a bucket of vinegar and let it sit there for whatever you guys decide. That's going to get rid of that calcium, and then rush water through it, brush it off a little bit. You know, you could take one of the big brushes, swirl it around in the thing, anything to kind of get that moving. And I buy the big white vinegar in the big gallon jugs, and I just pour that in and use straight vinegar. But you don't want to mix it with water because that just diluted it. So if you're ready to do it, make sure you have a lot of it to do. So do a lot of it at once. Otherwise, you're just wasting that vinegar, unless you're going to use it to kill some weeds or something like that. Yes.
I put magnets on my supply lines at my house so that it makes the calcium not bond as strongly because it puts a slight charge on it, and the reason it becomes hard is it's an ionic bond. So if you can buy those magnets, you can buy big magnet ones that are designed for putting on pipes, and it will help.
So when you put that magnet around that beginning of the line, how many times do you need to open it up and get out what's stuck up in there with the magnet?
It doesn't stick. What happens is as
it changes
through, it supercharges the calcium so that it's unequal.
Oh, good.
The charge, and so it doesn't bond as hard. So you can scrape it a little easier. It doesn't get quite as
bad.
rugged.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good idea. Is it the magnets?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, look up that. Pool filter magnets. Wow, what you learn in these places, huh? Yeah, good. So again, we don't use that. We're a much smaller entity, but you know, individually, you guys can figure out what's best and what saves you as much as possible. Next. Oh, hold on a second. So again, every 2 to 3 years, depending on the sun, the animals, the insects, and maybe gardeners that poke holes in it. We love the gardener that's, oh, sorry, I used my fork and jammed it in there. That seems to be the big one. Or they decide to dig right next to their plot and they break my line and then I got to go back. So be real careful as you're walking around. Next, oh, okay, here we go. Drip times. Cure times can vary in different parts of Tucson area, foothills, low-lying areas. So the big thing is not everybody drips the same. We have all sorts of different, you've got to sit there and take your first year almost to figure out how your drip time is going to work. Now remember, you're not looking, if you decide to look at how much water is on top of my garden, and that's what I'm going to decide, or how deep it is, you better do it right when it's dripping. Because a lot of people will let it drip, come back an hour later and say, why is it dry? Well, because the water's gone down to where it's supposed to. So you got to really think about that. Our biggest argument with our gardeners is my garden's dry. And I say, dig down 4 inches. That's where the water's supposed to be. It's not supposed to sit on top. We're not in Oregon like my daughter, where everything is mushy and soggy all the time. And everything's big and green all the time.
To defeat that, I often use a drip probe, right? A moisture probe, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
To do that,
Yeah.
to figure out how much water I'm getting in my garden. So.
Yeah. I got my little probes to tell me all what's happening, all the different things. You know, it's a game. It's the wonderful. That's why we do this gardening, I think, is because to me, it's always a game. What's going to come up and what's going to look good that year? I was just telling people, I can't grow broccoli. I cannot grow broccoli over at the school. I have no idea. It just dies off and I can't. Right next to it's the most beautiful artichoke. Over here is tomatoes, huge, all the other stuff. Broccoli will not work with me. So I don't grow, I don't. I'm just like, nope, I don't want the frustration. I'm going to grow what I like over here. So you got to decide. Other considerations are in ground and raised beds. So in ground, as you know, you're going to have a square dug into the ground, whether it's a foot, 14 inches, 24 inches, whatever you've dug down. And also you're going to mix your soil with the soil you took out of that garden. So it's going to be a heavier, denser soil. So you're going to have that. And plus the walls on each side plus the bottom is going to be a very dense because you haven't disturbed it. So the water is going to stay in there longer. It's not going to dissipate. It'll dissipate nice and slow. You have a raised bed, you're going to add your own soil. And the problem we've had too is people add their own soil to a raised bed and they don't walk their bed. And when I talk about walking your bed, I'm talking about getting up in the bed and walking on it. Soil needs to be packed down to hold moisture. If it's all fluffy, it just, like everything else, it's just going to work its way down. So what we do is we fill it to the top, and then we walk on it, which drops it about 3 inches. Then we add the 3 inches and we don't walk on that. We just kind of dig down and fluff up the next 4 to 6 inches and kind of put our plant in there. Now the base is nice and compact, and then you have that top that's fluffy. Now your roots are wonderful about getting down in there. Don't ever worry about it. Unless you have rocks in there, they're not going to go through. But roots are wonderful about getting down into that soil. I've dug to the bottom and found tons of roots. Yes?
Adding soil each season to a raised bed?
I do add soil because it packs down. The other thing is every year I flip the first 12 inches, my shovel depth. I'll stand there and every season I'll take out about a foot of it, and then I sit there and I flip and I walk backwards and I flip my whole garden back and forth, and then I fluff it up, and then I come back to the end and I add that piece that I took out that I kind of started with, and then depending on how it looks, I might add a bag or two. So it's just topping up. I want to make, my beds are 2 blocks. Oh, she said, do you add soil to a raised bed? And I said, yes, if you need to, but you always flip it once a year and then see how much you might need. Again, you're always going to lose soil, any kind of bed. You just seem that it packs down, the plants are taking some of it, and you're taking the plants away with everything, and the soil stuck to those. So again, there's always decisions on how much. My raised beds, or the raised beds that I prefer, are raised beds that are 2 block high, 16 inches. So I lay them on the hard ground, I raise up, I put down weed cloth, I put down a hard cloth to keep the rodents from coming up in, and then I lay my block across the top, 2 block high, and then I put a cap block on. And a cap block is a solid 8x16, which just kind of covers up those holes. So those holes are covered. It looks very nice. I add the soil in, I walk it, I add those last 2 inches of soil, and I'm ready to plant once my irrigation's going. Okay. Now the difference is when you water, we water our raised beds less, because if you water them for a whole hour, it's just going to seep out the block and go up. If you go up to, we had to put a garden up at it's called Shay Shay up at Jewish Community Center, and we put plastic down because we put actually vinyl signs underneath with wood on because it was so rodent infested up there. So we had all this, and the problem is they water like they do every other garden, and the water goes all the way down, hits the vinyl, and just goes out. And actually, I took off 2 blocks the other day because I had to fix one of them, and the bottom 8 inches is just almost pure wet soil, like you're living in Oregon. I mean, it's just mush. So I keep trying to tell them, we need to water less. The water's there. Just make sure when you think about it, when you have a raised bed, be real careful how much water it's contained down there and how much is running out. That'll really kind of lose a lot. Remember, we're in Tucson. The top of your bed is not going to tell you how much water it's getting. It's going to dry out in 2 seconds most of the time. You got to dig down a little bit or stick your finger in there and really check, or have your probes to figure it out. You got to figure out how to do it, because we have people that come from back east in different places, and they're out there every day soaking the heck out of their garden. And the thing is we'll get to that. Your plants don't understand it. All right. So season, temperature, out of that. Okay. Overgrowth, invasive, volunteer plants, all that stuff. Remember, you have those volunteer plants that come up and you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. Remember, that plant is taking away the nutrients in the water from yours, other ones. So every time you allow something that shouldn't be in your garden to be there, that's a problem. Like everybody, these are mesquites, our palo verdes. They start in the gardens, they're coming up everywhere, and everybody goes, oh, that's cute. It's right there on the fence. It'll be shade. No, I have to rip it out in 5 years because it's mangled the fence. It's blocking the plots that everybody's complaining there's no sun on them anymore, and all the leaves and everything are falling into the plots and not. So you have to clean up your area. You have to get rid of all the weeds. You have to get rid of all the tree sprouts. You got to get all volunteers away from that. The big thing about overgrowth is, again, you're leaving a plant in there that's getting big, that's not productive anymore, but it's taking up the water and nutrients from other things that you're growing. So, it's hard to pull that plant out and say, I'm going to recycle it, throw it in my compost, but you got to take care of that. It's a constant thing of what needs to be there. Culling different plants. You plant 1,000 seeds, you might have to pull a couple hundred out because the other ones can't grow. Your carrots are this thin because they're all jammed up against each other. So, you got to get in there and pick. If it was gardening was easy, then we'd just all be growing stuff, right? You got to get in there and get dirty. It's a heck of a job, as Bill knows. He does it for a living. Okay. So you understand there's also, when your garden's down, that there's stuff to plant to leave that, so you'll put something like a cover is what they call it. So you put some flowers in there and you allow you say, I'm not gardening for 3 months. I'm just going to let the flowers grow in there. Keep the nutrients moving through it. Let those plants die, mix them back into the plant, mix them back into the soil. Okay. There's a lot of things you have to do. You got to make sure that a lot of people don't know, if you get lettuce or anything like that blooms, it changes the taste of it. So if you let things bloom, lettuce, anything, it's going to become more sour because now all the nutrients are going up to that flower and the leaves aren't going to taste the same. Okay, so there's a whole process to this. I mean, you talk to all these wonderful gardeners out here, you'll get so much information from them. That's the big thing is I'm, been doing it for 45 years and growing since I was a little kid with my mom, and I still learn constantly. And the biggest thing is almost sometimes when I just barely do the basics, I get the best garden. If I just stay on top of pulling those weeds, taking care of the stuff I need to, making sure that there's a little bit of extra stuff I do, I'm really surprised. Everybody talks about, well, am I missing, what am I missing in my soil? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just the little things that we missed and we need to take care of. I mean, if you buy the bags of soil, there's everything in there. And you can go buy the most expensive with all these special things in it. I use the basic soil. I raise worms at the schools, so I have tons of bottles of worm compost that I spread all over. I mean, it's just, I'm still trying to get rid of so much of it. I got so much worms. I have 2 huge worm farms. So, and of course we have Inch by Inch that sells that. It's wonderful to go there. They sell it also. They sell the worms. I buy my worms from them, and the kids grow the worms and we feed them and everything. So it's nice to have. So there's lots of little things you can learn about doing, how much to put on there. A gallon of it's not going to help. It's just sprinkled on top is always best over a period of time. So really think about that, is what do you have growing and what needs to be there? That's always going to help you too, raised bed or not. And what's in between in your walkways? Yes. Yes.
Figs, pomegranates. I know they eat less during the winter, right?
But we don't have winter, right?
They need half what they.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes, he's asking, when you have trees or other items that you're growing, what is the difference between summer watering and winter watering? Because they drop their leaves during the winter, most of them. So do you really need to water? Really, you don't need to water. You're talking almost half. You're really just keeping those roots, kind of continuing to keep those roots alive, keep the branches up. A lot of the trees you're supposed to trim down anyway. So you have a lot that you're supposed to cut off the branches and let new sprouts come up. So there's a lot of, it depends on what you're growing, how you're growing it. But as you know, we're supposed to be in winter right now. We had this warm, I'm just now planting for my garden for winter that I should have started planting way back at the beginning of November, because I knew this was going to happen. So now I'm saying this is my winter garden. It's going to be from January probably till March is what I'm going to probably get my winter garden going. It's crazy the way it's going. So you can't really count on a lot. So a lot of times, how much rain did we get? I'll judge a lot of things by how much rain do I think I'm going to get or we did get, and what is the trees doing now. Most of my fruit trees are still fine. They still have their leaves and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So everything's just now kind of, and then the tree freaks out. I'm going to give you a whole 2 weeks of winter. Oh, we're going to start. No, never mind. We're just going to be 80 degrees now. And the tree's going, what? Hold on a second. So you got to start playing with the tree a little bit. And like, what did you do and how did you do it? It's like my wife. She says, I said, do I turn on the heater? She goes, no, we'll have another freeze spell. Or should I turn off the cooler? No, we're going to have another heat thing or something like this. So there's always that where we cool down and then there's another little heat or cold coming in back and forth. So that's Tucson weather. It's very odd. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say depends on what you're trying to keep alive. So there's a huge thing there. Where you're at, you're going to be up in the foothills. Are you getting a little more rain because it's staying in those rocks as we come down? Is it going to freeze a little more down in the valley? You can say, I didn't pay for rain this year. Everywhere else it's raining. I guess I didn't pay enough taxes to get rain where I'm at. So who knows what's going to happen? That's what my friend always says. I must not have paid enough taxes because you got tons of rain. I'm getting nothing. That's what happens. And it seems everything skips up to Phoenix. So yes. We don't do monsoon. We do days of heat or days of temperature. So what we'll do is say, if we got 2 weeks of this temperature and we believe that's what it's at, we go to our winter watering system. Then when winter's close to the end, we'll say, did we get 2 weeks of above 75? All right, now let's go to our spring watering system. So we have usually 3. We have winter, spring, and summer watering. Sammy's wonderful about it. Sammy is our irrigation person as far as fixing all the little things and watering times, and he really investigates a lot of things. He watches the weather, the temperature, so he really focuses on that. He's real good about that. I kind of stay away from that and just say, I'll go fix it. I don't want to know when it's watering. So Sammy's wonderful. So he's with Tucson Community Gardens, And he can, give you some information, and I'm sure everybody here. Yeah. Too many gardens at Tucson. I'm sorry. I know. I get the Tucson, pretty many gardens of Tucson. Community is first. Different. I don't want to, I'm here for a Tucson organic gardener, so that's the first one. Yes. Next one, again, there's my huge yields. Those are the things I can grow. I can grow those hot peppers. I got bushes of them. They're out there all the time. My tomatoes are wonderful. My eggplants are wonderful. These are my favorite. Those are, why am I playing? What's that? Yellow pear tomatoes. They're a little sweet. If I grow those and I just sit there and walk through the garden, grab a handful, like popcorn. I'm just sitting there eating those all the time. They're very sweet. I've heard so many times you can know if, what am I saying there? What? I've heard so many times you can know it for overwatering in Tucson. Well, you can. I have no idea what that means even. I'm sure I meant don't overwater. Very much we talked about that. Plant as they go through the process like, so what I'm trying to do is the plants know about how you water. So what I do is I really go out and with my new seedlings, with my seeds, I water them. I'm out there every day giving them a nice sprinkle along with the drip system. As soon as they sprout and they're up 2 inches, I'm done. I let the system take over. Because otherwise, if I skip 2 days, my plant's going, hold on a second. I got this tons of water, and I've seen overwatered gardens, and they're wondering why everything's still wilty. Well, if a water sucks up too much water, they're like heavy, and they just drop, and sometimes they burn themselves. Our sun will take that water, and they'll burn it. If you water in the middle of the day, and that water gets sucked up into those leaves, and that sun hits it, it'll burn that plant. Okay, so you got to think about it. You water early in the morning. Why? I water at 4 in the morning during the summer because I want that plant to suck it up. And then sometimes at 2 o'clock, that plant is just hanging there, but it's holding up water in the roots. And I tell you, 6 o'clock at night, that thing just jumps up and says, all right, I lived through it. So you're going to get these plants that look like crap, kind of. Don't look good in the middle of our days. But you're going to have to look at it in the morning, afternoon, when that's that perfect temperature for them, when they kind of say, hey, I'm coming up. Okay? You got to decide. But if you keep watering them, and there's, again, where people overwatered, and then there was something wrong with the irrigation for a day or two, their plots just went, they just died off because there was too much water sitting there. You got to think about growing into, so what's going to make me the most sturdiest plant? I have a artichoke plant that I've had for 3 years, and I just keep letting it die off and come back and die off because I keep it on the same system. I don't water it at all. I let the system do it. So it understands exactly how much it's getting. So again, it's kind of a little guessing game sometimes. So think about watering when you have seeds in there. You want them to sprout. You want the little seedlings to come up. You want to water them a little bit, but at some time you got to let your system take over. Even when it's 110, you got to say the system's set exactly for letting this grow, and it'll continue to grow because you might be the one they're watering all the time, and the person next to you that doesn't has exactly the same garden as you because they've just allowed theirs to go, okay? So now you're realizing, do I really need to do this so much work on this? So that's a big thing. Overwatering is huge, and it costs a lot of money here.
Do you know this, if you water twice a day, is community garden based on water once a day?
Twice a day.
During the summer?
Usually morning and afternoon. So yeah, we try to do the question was, do you water once or twice a day during the summer? And we do twice a day. We water in the morning and we water in the afternoon. So we kind of let the plants go. Here's some water to kind of keep yourself through the day. All right, here's some water for at night for you guys to just bloom beyond belief. So that's the way we kind of picture it and everything. So again, it's all in areas too. There's a lot of different areas. How long? Is it a raised bed? Is it an in-ground? It's a guessing game for about a year or two. And then it's like, okay, we got it. And sometimes the first year you're like, yeah, there you go. I got it. I worked it out. I asked my neighbor and they're growing the same thing. So that's what I said on the bottom. Recommend the extra watering when they're seedlings or a seed. Next. We already kind of talked about this, the difference between the two, okay? Raised beds, how long you water, different from in-ground. It's again, how much the soil's holding on, how much it's in a, again, you're gonna water a pot a lot less than just something sitting on the ground that it can soak away from. That pot's gonna hold that water. If you ever pulled out your plant and the bottom's just soaking wet and you've been watering it and it's not done anything, and just that water's been sitting in there. Next. Okay. So no matter what, I've learned that when I use the thin poly, which is all those gardens that were built, use thin poly, it breaks. Now that's a sprinkler, but there was poly next to it, and and then this just, that sprinkler just made it even worse. So the poly broke, and then the sprinkler's going off, and now I have this big puddle, and I get to go out there and try to shovel away real quick and dig down, grab a hold and find out what's leaking down there. So that's most of the time is just digging down. And sometimes because everybody thinks that a garden needs to be done just like the city wants you to bury water. So when I go to a garden that's been done 15, 20 years ago that the city put in, they believe that the water line had to be 2 feet deep because of what we called the freeze line before. So I'm going down 2 feet for a line that should only be 6 inches underground because it's not a powered line or the water's not pressurized in there. It's just off and on from the line. So that's where I'm digging down. Almost all the gardens I dig in now, I bury the line, the poly line, or not the poly. The PVC is 10 inches deep, that's it. Because it's not under pressure during freezing times, and it doesn't need to be under pressure during freezing times. So again, it depends on where you're putting it. And remember now, everything from your box back to the line where it's under pressure should be at least a foot, if not a foot and a half deep. Somewhere in there. We don't really have they say we don't even have a freeze line. When a freeze line means that how much that soil from the top is going to freeze down. So where my daughter lives, the freeze line is 18 inches. In other words, the top of the soil, it can freeze 18 inches of that soil. So everything that's supposed to be frozen has to be lower than that. She lives in Salem, Oregon. So it's not too bad as being cold. So you go back Chicago, you're going to bury that stuff down. Their freeze line's probably 2 to 3 feet. So again, it's all this different stuff. Okay? So it's a lot of different things over time. I can't tell you the 100%. I can tell you a good way to set up your area, depending on your cost. I can tell you, to make sure it's filtered right. I can send you to professionals to talk about it. I can tell you which stores to go to. But it's so much your decision about what's best for your area. The good thing is to ask neighbors that are gardening there, or come to whoever it is that has a garden, whether it's Tucson Community Gardens, Community Gardens of Tucson, sorry, that has a garden near you. So there's 22 gardens all over, and there's one near. You can say, how do you guys water that? And what is how do you guys look at that garden? So if somebody has a garden next door to you, what are you doing? What's your freeze time? Get the information from them. But all you that have come from back east or wherever where it rains all the time and everything's green, that's not Tucson. We get this dark green, kind of this faded green. But I tell you, I walked over and I went into McCormick, which is a new garden we just put in at McCormick Park, and it is so green. And these gardeners are wonderful. They're, the plots there are 20 feet by 3 feet wide. That's usually with a raised garden, it's 2.5 feet by 20 feet long. That's usually what the garden is. That's a good base for garden. That's a good watering. So 20 feet long by 3 feet wide in ground, 19 feet long, 20 feet because of the block, but it shortens it up because of the block, 19 by 2.5, and that's a good sized bed to water. So that's a good raised bed. Anything smaller than that's wonderful. You get bigger than that, I'd double it. I'd make 2 beds. So again, on one system, we water 20 beds, 20 raised beds, 20 in-ground beds. We don't go over that because of the pressure, the 12 PSI pressures we use. That's about good enough to make sure the garden gets watered good. Okay. Now we might raise up the time on a garden also by how long that poly or how long that drip tape has been in the garden. Because we're finding out it clogs up a little bit, so we add 10 minutes because it's getting less of that 0.33 flow. So we might do that. So there's a lot of guessing games and all that. So as poly gets older, or as drip tape gets older, you might say, I'm gonna just add 5 or 10 minutes because it's a little more clogged now and I don't wanna replace it yet. It helps out a lot. A lot of the times too, you can place a cup underneath a drip and then turn it on for your 45 minutes and see how much you have. See whether it's a cup full, whether it's a half a gallon, what are you getting out of it? So that also tells you too. But again, if you don't put in that pressure regulator, if you use drip tape or anything, it could blow out those lines. Pretty simple. And that's what's going to happen to you. It blows out on you. I think that's it, right? All right. What questions? Anybody have questions? Well, and what's that?
You lay the. Really? Stop it up. I'll have to answer.
Yeah. So we don't. What we're going to do is when we build what do you put under a raised bed? And do you roll it up the sides of the raised bed? Or do you roll it up if you put anything in an in-ground? For a raised bed, what we do is we lay down a 4 foot wide by 20 feet long or 21 feet long of the weed barrier. Then we put the hard cloth on top, which is the 1/4 inch wire, hard wire cloth. Hardware cloth. I keep saying hardwire. Hardware cloth. You roll that out 4 feet and then you lay your blocks on top. Nothing needs to roll up on the inside. But you want to make sure that it's to the outside of the block. So each one of those holes is also protected. Otherwise, you're going to get growth up through each one of those blocks. And then, of course, we build it too high. You don't need it more than too high. 16 inches of soil is plenty. And then you lay that on top. Now, some areas, they say you want 20 inches of soil. So in that area, if you want to dig 4 inches out and then lay it down and lay your block, and then you're fine, you'll get that 20. But most 16, I've never had anything not grow in the full 16 inches of soil that I've put in a raised bed and packed down and made it right. So sorry, we have one more question back there. Yeah. Yes. I'm going to say it again.
Deep water gates that you're connecting the irrigation line to. Any best practices or thoughts about if that's an effective way of
Okay.
watering?
So we don't do a lot of the question is what's the best way to water trees? So an orchard or something like that, or individual trees. You use the stakes that press into the ground that drip the water directly into that. So it goes down 2 feet before it spreads out, all sorts of stuff. So the big thing about that is where I work, I don't do a lot of orchards. We already have them set. We just drip on top. Bill is your best bet to tell you exactly what he used to do because he was in irrigation, a staller, and still kind of does. So I'm going to pass it over to him to help you with that question. Okay.
Just shortly, the best answer, check the soil. That's going to tell you what it is. There's probes you can put in. If it's wet, it doesn't need water. If it's dry, you need to water it. So that's going to tell you how often to water. And if you're going down, see how deep it goes, that will tell you how long to water. And that will change as the temperature changes, which is what your question was originally. So check the soil. It's going to tell you. If it's hot like now, it's going to be more than if it was normally winter. And all the clocks, you can turn on and off when it rains, and you can change them all the time. So, which a lot of people don't quite do.
Question here.
Okay, I think I have the microphone for the Zoom folks. What is your take on soaker hoses?
They tend to clog here. They tend to clog. So what John uses with the drip tape or using inline emitters is a much better way to do it. Sure.
Do you worry about the plastic? I mean, the off gassing, the pieces that break down. I mean, plastic breaks down here, then it gets in the soil. And if we're trying to grow organic, we're adding more of the PFASs and other kinds of plastic debris into our soil and potentially plants. So do you worry about that, or do you not see that as a problem?
I do not worry about it. And part of the problem, though, if I can, when drip irrigation lines, the poly lines that were put in, when I put them in 30 years ago when I started doing landscaping, they're still there. They've started using recycled and over recycling it, so it's no longer what they call virgin poly anymore. That is supposedly why all the lines break. So they're probably breaking down more, but I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm just saying that why John always says these always break, it's because they do now where they didn't used to. And there's solutions using a thicker pipe. I don't think it's really going to degrade running water through it.
The big thing about, we talk about all the, whatever the P, whatever that get into the system and everything, that's air. We have it. So you have to decide, am I going to go out and put the hose on it and flood it like we used to in the past for 10 minutes and dig trenches and let it run down, and that's the way I'm going to water? Because I am worried about that a little bit. But the big thing is, you've got to think all the food you buy in the store is probably watered this way, everything. So you're not going to get that. You're not going to get enough to affect you over a lifetime. You're getting more from everything else, whether it's your garden as well as everything else you eat. It's everywhere now. So if you're really worried about that and you want to protect, your vegetables and what's coming out of there, then hand water. But you're going to have to do that every day. It's not going to be on a system. Just do what you got to do. Still coming through a rubber hose, probably. You're not going to get as much because it's not sitting there degrading. No, I'm not defensive at all.
It's an interesting thing.
It's wonderful. That's the thing, is we don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not even defensive. I'm like, it's crazy. Right. Yes. Yes, and I worry about it. I mean, my son's going through something right now. Who knows what caused it and everything else? I mean, my mom and the cancer and all the other stuff. Who knows? There's a lot more of everything going on. I don't know, but it's prevalent out there. I can't, if I feel better about my garden and I hand water, because I do that in some spots, especially my home garden is all hand watered. I love to go out in the afternoon. I get that whole 30 minutes where I get to water my garden and just breathe. Hell, his garden's a little bigger than mine. Mine's smaller. So you got to decide, is that's my Zen time. And I feel better about hand watering at that. So again, it's a great thing to bring up, is that let people think about that too, is where do you want to go with it? So yes. Any other questions? Anything else? So go ahead. Yes. I'm going to repeat it.
Can you get somebody to map it for you?
That's it. Repeat.
When you move into a new house, how do you know what's there? I'm sure a reputable landscaper would be able to do that for you. Yeah, good luck.
Here.
But but I turn it on. I mean, you have to learn how the clock works. Most people don't understand that. But if you turn on the different valves and see what's where, and you can kind of see what it's doing.
Well, that's what I want to say too. What I want to say too is, at the house, me and him, when we put in irrigation, we do it on purpose. We say, okay, we're going that way and that way. Wonderful. When I take over these gardens, I'm like, well, the hose is supposed to go, the poly line's supposed to do this. And then I go, okay, I'm going to start digging. Can't find it. I can't find it. I mean, 5 feet over here. What the heck is the poly line doing over here? They go this direction and turn and go. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So again, you'll never know exactly where everything is unless something breaks and you got to pull it up, and then you'll somewhat guess. But it's bringing out a professional like Bill or somebody like that somewhat can say, this is which direction it should go. And that's what I believe is in your house.
I'll put line in the ground and then I'll stick a shovel through it 10 minutes later. So even I don't know where it goes after I've buried it. So it's hard to tell. But somebody had a question or was talking about the using the magnets.
Yeah.
Sure, you did. And part of that is kind of what he talks about too, is how the calcium builds up in the lines. One thing I do, and maybe it's something that you can do with a different thing, is I use this line. I've used this in my garden, same kind of thing. There's emitters built in every 6 inches. They're self-flushing, supposedly. You can run this about 20 feet. It's similar to what he does. It's just a different way of doing it. They're about a half a gallon per hour out of each one. What I put on the end of every one of them is this emitter, which is a self-flushing emitter. So every time this water line comes on, this will squirt out water until it moves enough to seal off. And if you do that, then the salts that maybe are getting bigger from what you're doing would then be flushed out. And in doing this, it makes it last a lot longer. So where you're saying this maybe lasts 2 years, yeah, it does. And so does the stuff you use last 2 years. So if,
Home Depot? Probably Sprinkler World.
no, this is Home Depot.
Is it Home Depot also?
Yeah, well, it might be Sprinkler
Well, the
World,
big
but
thing is
Rainbird makes this too.
These are not self-flushing, but you have the difference of the two.
But if you put the self-flushing emitter on the end, because usually you put a goof plug on the end, you plug it off, and then it has nowhere to go. So we've started doing this over the last 10 years, and it really makes this last a lot longer. And I think maybe with yours, you said you had end caps. Sometimes they put end caps on it so you can manually flush it, which would be a good idea to do. They also make a self-flushing end for it that maybe I can show Sammy or something about. Would be interesting to try.
Hold on a second. We put on one of the slip covers, and then every 6 months when we flip our garden, we open it up and
Yeah.
flush the line.
Yeah, there is some that will do it automatically.
Here, and then we'll,
And if I could, can I, oh, I'm
we're
sorry.
gonna go here.
Yeah. Okay, about finding the lines. I've volunteered in I don't know how many different gardens around the city, big and small. And nobody that I've ever worked for has a map of where their lines are. That's what I did when I replaced all that stuff. And I won't name the gardens because they're,
Yeah.
anyway, but I every time I put in a line, I mapped it on my major map.
Can I?
I made sure they had a print of it and I gave them a digital version on it.
I have done commercial jobs where I do an as-built plan, but you never see that in residential.
Yeah. That's the
But
big
as-built, but these. Mhm. Now it goes. Take pictures also. You can do it now. The issue is not being able to know where anything is. Where when you're putting stuff in, if you draw it on the plans, it's called an as-built plant where everything is. The other thing you can do now is take a picture. You can walk around, and we'll do that too. You walk around, oh, I put that in before I bury it, I'm gonna take a picture. So that's a good thing to do now, which you couldn't do years
I
ago.
have a question here.
I just have a question about, you called some things poly, you have drip line, and you have
This is,
drip tape.
this
swing
is poly,
pipe.
half-inch
That's-
polyethylene pipe. That's drip tape, which is a different
So-
form of emitter.
So the difference between,
Distribution pipe.
yes. So this is poly, half-inch poly. It's very hard. It's a solid line. It does not have holes unless you poke an emitter into it. So that's what poly line is. You have to poke.
It's the
emitters into it.
distribution tube
Drip tape is
to
much
get to
thinner, it's
this
flat,
or to that.
it's mushy. So it just flattens out and fills up with water as needed.
And you-
Spaghetti line is 1/4 inch. And it is solid and it has the drippers built in,
There's-
or you can buy solid spaghetti line
All right.
in
This-
case you want to.
This one has emitters built in it. They come every 6 inches or every 12 inches. I usually use the 6 inch because that's the spacing of the plant we use. It's called 1/4 inch spaghetti.
It's
Can,
1/4 inch drip.
Spaghetti, they would probably know what you meant.
yeah, but it's 1/4 inch. It's actually 220, but we don't even go there with that.
No problem. All right.
Hey, could you please briefly talk about it? Due to the water pressure, we cannot run the live indefinitely. So there's a length like based
Yeah.
upon the mathematical calculation that you can go just so long, and then you probably need to put in another valve.
Right. This I've been able to get how the pressure affects how much water you can run through. And yeah, there's charts that will show that by the size of your pipe. You can also do your own test. You can turn a hose on, turn it on somewhere, try to fill a 5-gallon bucket, see how long it takes. It'll tell you how many gallons per minute you're running. So it's kind of the same thing. This I've ran 25 feet, 30 feet without a problem because it is reduced. It's on a lower pressure. Yours, I think, would go farther because I've seen them in orchards running that really long, but they'll probably have power or boost it somewhere. And it would depend on your feeds also, if that makes sense. But general, just using it around here in your garden. This is what I had when I had my garden. My garden became a greenhouse. I don't have it anymore. But I would run these just in the rows about a foot apart. I would also on this, which surrounded it, I put spray nozzles on it that I could turn on and off. So when I was starting seeds, you could open it up and then water the whole ground and then turn it off when you were just wanting to water it by the roots.
When we water with drip tape, we're always thinking of a triangle. So the big thing about when we water with drip tape is it's going to start out dripping out like this, but as it goes down, it's going to widen. So we're going to get a good 6 inches, about 8 inches down. We're 6 inches wide of that water spreading out. So you got to really think about when you're watering, whether it's the 1/4 inch line, the 1/2 inch line, the drip tape, whatever it is, right on top, you're only getting what's hitting the soil. It shouldn't be sitting on top of that soil. If it's sitting on top of that soil, there's a problem. It's too hard. It's got to get in. So it should be dropping down 1 inch wide, and then it should be going out. Now, if it is going out, you shouldn't see puddling. So the big thing about puddling is you might see it right when it's dripping, but you got to come back and you got to check, is it staying on top? Is my puddling not dissolving into the ground? Is it not going down to the roots where I need it to go? Is it just basically, why we're having all these trees fall over is because they're putting in drip line on these big, huge mesquites in these trees, and they're allowing after 2 years that drip line to continue. So those roots don't have to go down and find a good base. They're sitting on top, and then the wind comes and they go, well, I have nothing to hold me up. So you got to think about that. When I talked about watering your seeds and your seedlings, is you're trying to get that root base down 2, 3, 4 inches with that little 2 inches on top, and then you're allowing those roots with the drip system to get down and find that and get down that foot deep. They should be just digging in down there and really finding that base, really finding a good source.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have y'all used, so you can get the drip line like this in this size. So you would have higher flow. Why do you not use the inline emitter? Is it because the drip tape is cheaper?
It's because drip tape's cheaper. Again,
Okay, but that's another way. They make this at the Home Depot with the emitters built in, and they're all pressure compensating, to go back to your question. So you won't get tons of pressure at one end and not at the other. It compensates through there too.
Now Bill also, I'm going to answer what question. Bill also brought emitters. You got the emitters?
Yeah.
Are they in here?
I think that was, well, that's
there
one
we
of
go.
them.
Here, the red
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, there's different emitters for
Different emitters will put out a
flows.
gallon, 2 gallons,
That's 2
1
gallons.
gallon, all different things that have the rest. And you can put in the poly and pop one of these in wherever you want. They do it on trees. What I do is I'll surround a tree with poly and I'll put in drip line every 3 feet around it. And then as the tree gets bigger, I bring that poly out to bring it out just as big as that. And at the end, you should have a drip. But after 2 years, you got to decide. Am I watering this because it's a fruit tree and I want the fruit? Or is it a mesquite and I'm done watering it and it has to figure it out itself? It's got to find its base. So there's so much. You're going to water your trees. Your orchard's got to be watered. How much time, it's got to continue and continue. That's what all that brings up and all that fruit lives off of. All the nutrition in the water. The other trees, you got to decide, when do I stop watering? I am now, my big mesquites in my front yard, I'm done. It's been 2.5 years. Don't water them anymore. Soaker hoses, again, are wonderful because you can circle them and you can leave them on. Again, what we're finding is they clog so fast for us. And I'm just not getting enough years out of it to say, I want to use soaker hose. So a lot of people will put a soaker hose down their hedges, just leave it laying in there and keep watering it. But I'm finding out, I mean, they might last a long time depending on what, but I'm not getting enough use out of them to say that's worth my money. I'd rather hook up a hose and just run drip tape or poly down through it and everything like that, because there's. Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna get on the soaker hose that's cheap, or in general, even distribution though.
It's always gonna have more
So
pressure.
I think you would be better off using one of these that has the inline emitters in it, because it will be the same on each end. And they're not that much more. It's not a whole lot more than just buying the poly. And like I said, you go to Sprinkler World, they probably have it. Netafin makes it, but a lot of companies make it.
All right, quick question. And I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
Could be. Keith's the Oya expert, I guess.
All right, somebody
I
tell
don't
me who
use
that
them.
is. Is
I
that
don't
the
use
pots,
Oya.
the clay pots? Yeah.
Wow. I've had some, I have Oyas in part of my garden that has a reservoir. So it keeps pressure on that Oya all the time. And I've had plants in there for 3 years straight, the same plants. And it survives through the summer. It hardly uses any water. It's beautiful.
How do you get the water into the Oya?
I use my irrigation system, but it has a reservoir that has a float. So once it's full, it shuts up. Yeah. Yeah, I do that as well. Yeah.
Related to that is I will take all my busted pottery, my, what do you call it?
Charge.
Yeah, the red pottery, everything is busted up, terracotta,
Busted
and
pottery.
all the busted pottery, and I lay pieces in my garden, under the ground a little bit. And that just sucks up that water and holds it, kind of distributes it. So instead of just throwing it away, I kind of take pieces and place them around on top of a dripper, drips on that, and it holds that water right there and keeps it nice. And it also makes a little thing. I'll put it in the bed. I'll put it right into the dirt, right below an emitter. I'll just take a piece and dig down and put the emitter on top and let that soak up and hold some water. During the summer, it's great because it just sits there and holds that water and slowly lets it drip out. So.
Do you have,
Yeah.
No, it's one reservoir that feeds, right now it's a system. I have 6 of them hooked up in series through 1/4 inch line, but no drip emitter, obviously, but just standard 1/4 inch line. It's above it, so it has a little gravity, so it feeds the Oya. So it takes as much as it takes. I just fill it off of my irrigation system. Every time it runs, it fills the reservoir. So my reservoir is about 2 gallons, and my Oyas are only about maybe a pint of water each, maybe. Yeah. And I bury the Oyas in the ground, obviously.
So there's.
And I plant around the Oya. Oh, it's great.
I'm going to talk about your other thing again. So on Saturday at the Haverim Garden, which is Community Gardens of Tucson Garden, which is.
That's at Speedway and Bancroft area.
Saguaro, 2nd and Saguaro. I believe you have to sign up for it. Is that through Community Gardens and through y'all? So, and there's spaces still left. Still, okay.
So
Well,
we're gonna get you
I'm gonna
in the
be
garden.
there. So, and us too.
And we're-
He's blind, so you have problems. He was an umpire, so y'all know that. We had to bring that up.
He was a coach, so no, I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, come on, Blue.
Yeah.
So that will be happening on Saturday. It starts at some time.
It starts at, I believe it's 9 to 11, right?
11.
Is that right?
And there'll be a hands-on of seeing how it's done in an actual garden.
Yeah, it's on our
community
website.
too,
It's,
website also.
yeah.
So I have,
I don't even know.
are we done online? Okay.
Oh, okay, you don't need that in.
So.
Well.
And this one, my bad.
So Colin helps more and makes you think more about it, but that's what garden is what am I gonna do? Hopefully you got little tips here and there, and every time you just pull a little more in from all as well as us. And that's the big thing, is ask a lot of questions, gardeners, what was on. Yeah, yes, I don't talk a lot.
Where did that come from?
Actually, I was pretty shy as a kid, but for some reason. But when you're talking about gardening or working, you know, so it's always funny when I say you just work for deaf or blind. Never ask me if I know the right way, but nobody cares. All right.